Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you news that weighs heavy on the heart. Some truly remarkable people have recently left this world. In this video, we will share their stories, their legacy, their final chapters. As a sign of remembrance and in support of their memory, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your simple action can help others hear their stories and keep their memory alive. We won't delay any longer. Let's begin this tribute to those we've lost. On April 31, 2025, in Oakland, California, the world said goodbye to Denise Marjorie Langston, a transformative American civil rights lawyer, constitutional scholar, and mentor who spent her life defending voices history tried to erase. She passed away in the city where she had first stood before a judge as a trembling 23-year-old public defender, and where, 5 decades later, entire generations still spoke her name with reverence. Denise was born on December 5, 1953, in Birmingham, Alabama, during the height of the segregated South. Her father, a postal worker and Korean War veteran, was quiet and steady. Her mother, a schoolteacher who lost her job for organizing a teacher's strike, was fierce, principled, and brave. From them, Denise inherited both endurance and eloquence. She grew up watching courtrooms from the back rows, knowing even as a child that justice was not a guarantee. It was a battle. When Denise was 11 years old, she witnessed the aftermath of the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. She did not speak for 2 days. On the third, she began writing short legal arguments, fictional courtroom dialogues, letters to imaginary senators. At 16, she was already working part-time at a local law firm, filing briefs and reading legal dictionaries for fun. She received a full scholarship to Spelman College and later graduated from Harvard Law School in 1978, where she was one of only 5 black women in her class. Her mentor, Professor Carl Wexler, famously called her the sharpest legal mind I ever saw, wrapped in fire and grace. Denise began her career as a public defender in Oakland, where she earned a reputation for taking cases no one else wanted: immigrant women, incarcerated teens, political protesters. In 1986, she argued Taylor v. State of California, a landmark case in which she successfully defended the free speech rights of student activists. The case set a new precedent and was studied in constitutional law courses across the country. In 1992, she founded the Langston Center for Constitutional Equity, the first nonprofit in the United States dedicated solely to community-based constitutional education. Through mobile clinics, workshops, and outreach, the center helped tens of thousands understand their legal rights in housing, policing, and employment. Her crowning achievement came in 2009, when she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom for redefining justice as a lived experience, not a legal abstraction. That same year, she was named to the United Nations Advisory Committee on Civil Liberties, where she helped draft global policy on equitable access to due process. But Denise's path was not without hardship. In 2001, she suffered a stroke that left her partially paralyzed. Doctors doubted she would walk again, much less return to trial work. But she refused to accept finality. Through rigorous therapy and unrelenting determination, she recovered, relearned her speech cadence, and returned to teaching within 18 months. Her marriage to journalist Nathaniel Bird lasted 28 years, a union marked by profound love, intellectual debates, and periods of silence, particularly during Denise's most intense cases. They had 2 children, Mariah and Samuel, who once described their mother as a woman who fought dragons by day and still packed our lunches every morning. At home, Denise was quiet and observant. She loved black coffee, old court transcripts, and gospel records. She kept every letter her clients ever wrote her, and she spoke to her houseplants as if arguing precedent. Her closest friends recall her saying, "The law is only as alive as the people brave enough to demand it." Despite her prominence, Denise never saw herself as elite. She donated over 70% of her earnings to education initiatives, prison reform programs, and voter access efforts. Her mentorship shaped hundreds of legal minds, among them judges, professors, activists, and lawmakers. She insisted that her students write their opening arguments by hand, so you can feel every word you intend to stand on. Her favorite sayings included, "Justice without clarity is theater. Never speak louder than the silence you're defending. You don't win in court. You survive with purpose." In her final years, Denise lived quietly near Lake Merritt, surrounded by books, family, and former students who visited often. Her final public appearance was at a community town hall in late 2024, where she said, "The law will not love you back. That's why you must love the people more fiercely than the law ever could." She passed away in her sleep, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, with one hand resting on the original copy of the Bill of Rights she had framed above her bed. Denise Marjorie Langston left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in her writings, ideas, and students. On April 31, 2025, in St. Louis, Missouri, the world lost Harold Nathaniel Briggs, an extraordinary American neuroscientist, educator, and mental health advocate who reshaped the understanding of trauma and memory across multiple disciplines. He passed away peacefully in the same university hospital where he had once volunteered as a student researcher, nearly 6 decades before. Harold was born on January 21, 1947, in Cleveland, Ohio, to working-class parents. His father was a Vietnam War veteran-turned-machinist, and his mother was a nurse's aide who juggled night shifts in community organizing. Their home was modest but filled with structure, compassion, and an unspoken insistence on purpose. Harold grew up the youngest of 4 siblings, surrounded by stories of sacrifice and resilience. At age 12, he began reading medical encyclopedias borrowed from the public library and developed a fascination with the human brain, not as a mechanical object, but as a keeper of pain, joy, and mystery. At the age of 15, Harold witnessed his oldest brother suffer a nervous breakdown after returning from military service. The lack of proper diagnosis and support at the time sparked a fire in Harold that would guide the rest of his life. As he later wrote, "It wasn't the silence of the system that frightened me. It was the fact that nobody thought the silence was strange." He earned a scholarship to Johns Hopkins University, where he majored in neurobiology. His doctoral thesis at Stanford University in 1975, titled Neural Pathways of Post-Traumatic Recall, was among the first scientific works to argue that trauma was not only emotional, but neurologically encoded. This groundbreaking research led to a new understanding of memory disorders, PTSD, and cognitive dissonance. In 1981, Harold founded the Cognitive Integration Lab at the University of Chicago, where he spent over 3 decades leading research into neural mapping, emotional patterning, and the biological architecture of memory. His 1993 paper, The Silent Circuit, was cited over 8,000 times and became a cornerstone in neuroscience and psychotherapeutic training. But Harold wasn't only a researcher, he was a reformer. In 1997, he co-created the National Brain Equity Initiative, which focused on expanding mental health services to underserved communities and advocated for neurodiversity inclusion in federal policy. He frequently challenged the racial and economic bias in medical diagnostics, calling out institutions that failed to consider cultural trauma in treatment protocols. His contributions earned him numerous awards. In 2003, he received the Presidential National Science Medal for redefining how memory and trauma intersect in the human brain. In 2010, the World Health Organization recognized his work with the Global Mind and Health Prize for bringing neuroethics and social justice into public health frameworks. Harold's journey was also marked by deep personal challenges. Early in his academic career, he faced systemic racism and was twice passed over for tenure despite leading research. A public letter of support signed by over 200 neuroscientists later forced the institution to reverse its decision. He often told young scientists, "No discovery is louder than the sound of a locked door being kicked open." At home, Harold was a quiet and devoted man. He married children's author and educator Lorraine Mackenzie in 1984. Their marriage was filled with warmth, occasional disagreements over book deadlines, and shared rituals, like Saturday mornings spent reading aloud to each other from scientific journals and fairy tales alike. They had 2 children, Charles and Naomi, both of whom followed in their parents' footsteps, one as a neurologist, the other as a child psychologist. Harold loved chess, jazz records, and writing postcards to former students, even decades after they graduated. His handwriting was famously small and perfect. He believed in handwritten thought, slow thinking, and the ethics of precision. Despite his global stature, he spent every Friday at the local clinic offering free consultations. He mentored over 100 graduate students, many of whom now lead major neuroscience departments across the world. His lab motto was simple: ask the brain but listen to the person. In his final years, Harold was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Though his mobility declined, his intellect remained brilliant. He continued writing, advising, and teaching until only weeks before his death. His last public appearance was at a TEDx conference, where he shared a talk titled "The Brain Remembers What We Try to Forget," a powerful exploration of societal denial and collective healing. In his final interview, recorded 2 days before his passing, he said, "If the mind is a map, then compassion must be the compass. That's all I ever tried to prove, in neurons, in lives, in love." He passed away during the early morning hours, with Lorraine reading aloud from a collection of poems by Langston Hughes. Outside, snow had just begun to fall. Harold Nathaniel Briggs left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in his writings, ideas, and students. Amelia Isabel Euphemia Rose Clark was born on the 23rd of October, 1986, in the Hammersmith district of London, England. She entered the world as the youngest child of Peter Roderick Rick Clark, a seasoned theatre sound engineer originally from Wolverhampton, and Jennifer Susan Jenny Dodd Clark, a sharp-minded businesswoman who would rise to become vice president for marketing at a major management consultancy and co-founder of the Anima Foundation, a charity supporting young people in Ghana. From her very first days, Amelia found herself nurtured by parents whose complementary passions, her father's deep love of live performance and her mother's dedication to disciplined excellence, created a household where creativity and compassion were equally prized. Her earliest years unfolded first in London and, soon after her birth, in the leafy suburbs of Oxfordshire. At the tender age of 3, a single outing to a West End staging of Showboat ignited in her a fascination with the stage's transformative power. She would later recount how the glow of the footlights convinced her that acting was not only possible but essential to her. Recognizing her daughter's spark, Jenny enrolled Amelia in weekend drama workshops at the local community center, where she learned the rudiments of voice projection and simple choreography long before learning to drive. On Saturdays, Amelia and her older brother Bennett scavenged scraps of fabric, from church sewing circles to fashion costumes for homemade productions, staging spirited tableaux on the lawn of their Oxfordshire home. As Amelia moved into her primary school years at Rice St. Anthony School in Headington, her zeal for performance only deepened. She joined both the choir and the theatrical society, thrilling friends and teachers alike with renditions of Mozart arias and improvisations of Shakespearean dialogue between lessons on algebra and Latin. Her capacity to memorize complex scenes and to inhabit characters far removed from her own upbringing earned early praise. And even as she brought down the schoolhouse with comedic timing, she maintained exemplary grades in English literature and history, demonstrating that her gifts extended beyond the stage. In her mid-teens, she set her sights on Britain's premier acting academies. Rebuffed by initial rejections from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, she refused to be discouraged. Instead, she spent a year working part-time at a West End cafe, traveling through Europe to observe street performers in Rome and pantomime troupes in Paris, and saving every pound toward her true ambition. Eventually, she won admission to Drama Centre London, where she immersed herself in an intense 3-year training program encompassing the Stanislavski system, Chekhov exercises, and devised theater methods that demanded both emotional vulnerability and physical rigor. Life at Drama Centre tested Emilia in unexpected ways. Early mornings began with voice and movement classes aimed at fortifying her instrument and heightening spatial awareness. Afternoons involved painstaking text analysis, breaking down character motivations with scholarly exactitude, and evenings were devoted to scene study workshops where peers and instructors offered candid feedback. She grappled with self-criticism and the sting of critiques, yet she discovered that surrendering to the truth of each moment, no matter how raw, was her greatest asset. By her final year, she commanded lead roles in studio productions of King Lear and A Streetcar Named Desire, earning standing ovations from fellow students and faculty alike. Shortly after graduating in 2009, Emilia made her professional debut with a guest appearance on the BBC One medical soap opera Doctors, stepping into the realm of television with the poise of a seasoned stage performer. Not long after, she secured a part in the fantasy pilot Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, portraying a young Alice whose memories of a magical realm rendered her both fragile and fiendishly clever. People.com. These early screen roles, though brief, provided her crucial on-set experience, learning camera marks, matching lighting cues, and navigating green screen choreography. In the spring of 2010, while still navigating auditions and commercial calls, Emilia received notice of an opportunity that would transform her career trajectory. Casting directors for a new adaptation of George R.R. Martin's novels were seeking an actress to bring to life Daenerys Targaryen, an exiled princess destined to command armies and dragons. In a modest London office, she delivered an audition layered with both regal poise and youthful vulnerability, drawing upon her own experiences of feeling like an outsider at boarding school. The producers, sensing an alchemy rare in actors of her age, offered her the role on the spot. When Game of Thrones premiered on April 17, 2011, Emilia's portrayal of Daenerys captured the imaginations of viewers worldwide. From her first scenes, clutching a basket of concealed dragon eggs, to her emergence as Khaleesi of the Dothraki, her performance radiated both steel and empathy. Though the sprawling ensemble cast shared the series' vast narrative, her moments of quiet defiance and sweeping monologues set her apart as a linchpin of the story's emotional core. IMDb. Even as her star ascended, Emilia remained a dedicated student of her craft. Between seasons, she continued attending specialized movement workshops to enhance her posture and combat training, consulted with dialect coaches to refine her Milanese accent, and shadowed veteran cast members to absorb insights on sustaining energy through grueling 12-hour shoots. She also managed the logistical challenge of balancing a demanding production schedule with personal growth, completing online courses in literature, mentoring younger performers, and contributing to her mother's philanthropic initiatives in Ghana. By the conclusion of the show's second season, Emilia Clarke had already secured her place as one of the most compelling young actresses of her generation. Her name graced magazine covers, critical essays examined her quiet ferocity, and fan-created art celebrated her as a symbol of empowerment. Yet despite the series' soaring ratings and her own growing acclaim, including Emmy nominations that honored her for Outstanding Supporting Actress. Her peak of global cinematic stardom remained on the horizon. She had not yet headlined major feature films, launched her production company, or become a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador. Those milestones still awaited her. In that pivotal period, when her work had drawn the gaze of millions, but before the thunderous applause of Hollywood's biggest stages, Emilia Clarke exemplified the essence of an artist in ascension, grounded by the formative lessons of her family's encouragement, honed by rigorous training, and guided by an unwavering belief in the transformative power of storytelling. Her early journey, marked by resilience amid rejection, wonder at each new role and devotion to her craft, left an indelible imprint on television history. In honoring those chapters of her life, one remembers a performer whose contributions had already resonated across continents, and whose legacy of passion, tenacity, and artistry would continue to inspire generations yet unborn.